Hi, welcome. Sorry about that. Hi, welcome to Cat in Japan. Thank you for clicking on my video. First, I need to apologize for the lateness of my video. Last Tuesday, I caught a cold. By Wednesday, I felt like I was on death's door and I couldn't call in sick because I'm my own employee. And I don't like canceling classes because scheduling makeup lessons is just such a pain. So I had to soldier on, and by Saturday, I had lost my voice. I tried to record a video on Monday, but it sounded like ASMR and it just didn't work. So here I am Wednesday with a decent voice. You can tell it's still a little low, and now and then I have a little but here I am, ready to go. Let's start the video. It's Christmas time, so a Christmas video about Japan would be great. But something happened to me at the post office last week. I'll show a little clip here of me. I'm not going to play the sound because there was a lot of swearing, but as you can see, I'm pretty upset. It changed my mind as to what kind of video to make. So, as you can tell by the thumbnail of my video, I'm going to be talking about things that are very frustrating in Japan. A lot of YouTubers and other people that have been here, TikTokers, what have you, are always saying how great it is here. It's amazing. And I know there are some videos out there about the bad side of Japan, but I'm going to talk about like the everyday frustration of living in Japan. Now, I love Japan. I've been here for 18 years, but just like any country in the world, there are pitfalls and just things that make you want to pull out your hair and say, why? So let's get to number one. So the first thing is staring. Now, this is maybe a one or two on the frustration level. It's something I can pretty much handle. It's not that bad, but sometimes it does get pretty bad. There's been a couple of incidences where I didn't handle it very well. I'll get to that in a moment. Some of you may say, well, I've been to Japan. I wasn't stared at. Well, in areas that have a huge tourist population, you're not going to get as much staring because the people are pretty much used to seeing foreigners running around the place. But when you get out of those areas into less touristy areas, you're going to get some staring. Now, most of the staring are from children, of course, they're curious. And as a teacher, I can pretty much handle it. It's no big deal. I smile or wave or I just nod my head and move on and no problem. But sometimes it can get really intense to the point where you feel a bit uncomfortable. Let me explain a couple of incidences that happened to me. And unfortunately, I don't know if I handled it well or not. I just want to let you know. So if you ever come to Japan and this happens to you, just turn away from it. Don't engage. Don't do anything. It's just out of curiosity. My first incident was last year. My family and I, my husband, my two kids were out in the mall shopping, and we went into one of our favorite stores. My children and I like this one aisle. It's got the little miniatures. They call them rements, and we like looking at them. Some of them we collect. Some of them we're just like, oh, maybe for a future whatever. So we're heading towards that aisle. There was a girl in the aisle. She's about 9 or 10 years old. So not too young, not too old, but at an age where more than likely she has seen foreigners before. And as I was approaching the aisle, she happened to turn around and see me. And she had this look on her face like she just saw Satoko climbing out of the TV. It made me stop and elbow my husband. And I was like, look at her face. My husband just like shrugged. He's like, just go to another aisle, leave her alone. I said, yeah, of course, I'm going to do that. I've never seen a child react to me like that before. And so me and my kids, we went off to other aisles and stuff. We were away from that aisle a good 10 minutes. And then my youngest kind of made her way back and she's like, mommy, come look at this. And so I came around the corner to go look at what she was talking about. And the young girl was still there. She happened to turn around and see me coming again, and she bolted. and went and got her older sister, dragged her sister to the aisle, had a death grip on her sister's arm, and was pointing at me. And the sister looked at me. I looked at the sister. We kind of locked eyes. The sister kind of shrugged, looked down at her sister, said something to her sister, and walked away. And the young girl just went with her sister. Now, the older sister, I think she was about 13 or 14, so she was older. And I was just like taken so aback by that. I was like, I have never had that visceral reaction to me being a foreigner in Japan. So that had me a little uneasy, but I let it go and didn't pursue it, nothing. So fine. The other incident happened a few months ago, and this one made me very uncomfortable to the point that I did say something. My children and I were at the mall, always at the mall, and we were visiting the restroom. And as we walked in the restroom, there was a mom there with a couple of kids, and there was a young girl there with her. I would say about same age, about 9 or 10 years old. And she saw me coming into the bathroom and had this deer in headlights look at me. And I'm like, okay, here we go. And I just kind of nodded my head at her and just continued on into the restroom. After finishing up, I come out of the stall and she's still there for some reason. I don't know what they were doing. They were like congregating for something. And she was still staring at me. And it made me feel uncomfortable because of the location we were at. I'm just like raised my eyebrows at her, like, are you done staring at me now? Her and her family left the restroom at that point. My children and I finished up in the bathroom. And as we were coming out, they were standing outside the restroom area talking or doing something, I'm not sure. And the young girl was staring at me again, just like, and because of the location I was at, near the restroom, in the restroom, it was just making me very uncomfortable and a bit upset. As I approached her to go past her to continue on into the mall, I just looked at her in the eyes and I was like, you need to stop staring. It's rude. And I kept on going. The thing was, the mom saw everything. The mom saw her staring at me. The mom didn't correct her, didn't apologize to me that her daughter was staring at me. So it was just a very unusual situation. Now, in the 18 years I've been here, those are the only two incidences that had made me feel uncomfortable. Most of the time, if somebody stares at you, you can lock eyes with them. They'll usually bow their head and apologize. If a little kid points, the parent is usually, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. So most of the time, it's not that frustrating. But sometimes when you're out in public with your family or you just want to be on your own and you're having all these people stare at you, it can be a bit uncomfortable. So if you're aware of that before coming here, then you can handle it better. Moving on to number two, which is about the same level as staring on the frustration meter, maybe a one or two, easing up maybe to a number three, is no chit chat from the cashiers. So, what I mean by this is when I'm in America and I go into Walmart or the convenience store or anything, I can chit chat with the cashiers like, hey, how are you today? It's really cold outside. Or, oh, I like your earrings. You get that repertoire with your cashier. You can have that fun chit chat and feel connected. Unfortunately, here you don't get that kind of connection with the cashiers, and you almost feel like you're not wanted. Now, let me explain. It's not because you're a foreigner, it's just the way their society is. The cashiers are all business. They greet you, they ring you up, they bag your products that you bought, they thank you for coming, give you your bag, and out the door you go. And it's all mechanical, all polite. There's no extra chit chat in there. And it can feel kind of like you're not wanted. It took me a while to get used to that here. When I go to the cashier or something like that, I'm like, hey, how are you? Of course, in Japanese. And they just look at me like shocked or like, why did you just ask me that? Or I'm like 1 or 2 yen short of having the exact change. And I'm like, oh no, if I had one more yen, I would have the exact amount. And I look up and the cashier's like, Are you going to pay me now? That sort of thing. And it can be a little off putting. However, there are some exceptions. If you frequent a store enough, you can get that connection with a cashier at that store. I have been able to do that with a few cashiers in my area. One is the local Daiso. They know me there pretty well. And I have one cashier that always asks me questions like, "Oh, is your husband back from Europe? How was Europe?" No, because I get to chit chatting with them, and I tell them I have a school, or, my kids are having a birthday party. And the next time I go back in, they're like, "Oh, how was the birthday party?" But in highly touristy areas, or an area that you're not going to frequent enough, you're going to kind of get a robot in the sense of the cashiers. And it has nothing to do with you being a foreigner. It just has to do with their society. They're very conservative, they're very businesslike, no fun, basically. But you will find a few cashiers that will engage with you. Usually, some of the younger ones, they will engage with you, but the older ones usually don't. So, if you ever come to Japan or move to Japan, don't ever feel like the cashiers or service people are being cool or standoffish. That's just the way it is here. On to number 3. And this one just moves up just a little bit on the frustration meter, maybe a 3 or 4. Japan has very weak medicine. And I'm not just talking about over the counter medicine. I'm also talking about medicine prescribed by the doctor. When I first got here, the teachers made me go to the doctor because I was sick with a cold. That's just the way it is here. It's not like America where you just go to the drugstore and grab some over the counter medicine and basically cure yourself. Here in Japan, you have a cold, you go to the doctor. I don't, but most Japanese do. Anyway, the doctor prescribed me some medicine, and I'm like, fine, I'll take it. After a couple of days, I was just like, I'm not feeling any different. I don't feel any effects of the medicine. What's going on here? So I happened to look at the medicine. I'm like, 1 milligram? Are you kidding me? 1 milligram? Maybe there are some medications out there that 1 milligram will work, but for curing a cold, a 1 milligram is not going to do it. My husband works for a pharmaceutical company, and he also agrees that the medicine in Japan is fairly weak. When I got sick last week and I was just desperate for some relief so I can go through my day and teach and everything like that, I messaged my Australian friend, my UK friend, and my American friend. And I'm like, do any of you have Tylenol cold or Benadryl, please? They're like, no, sorry, we don't have any. So I asked my husband, please go to the drugstore and get the strongest medication you can find. I need some relief. So he went to the store and he goes, this is the strongest I could find. I took it. No change whatsoever. Usually, when I visit America, I stock up on my Tylenol and Benadryl, but there's only so much you can bring here because you can get in trouble. So be careful with that. And it's been a year since I've been to America, so my supplies are gone. You can bring over the counter medication here to Japan, but only a small amount. So be very, very careful. If you're going to travel here or move here and there's an over the counter medication in your country that works for you, I suggest you bring it with you, but just a small amount. Like I said, immigration here is pretty strict and there's only so much you can bring. This may not pertain to everyone, but as an American, actually, I've had a lot of my foreign friends, UK friends, Australian friends, American friends, let's see, Indian friends, all of them have told me that the medicine here is pretty weak. And I would not suggest taking more than suggested. Like, oh, if it's that weak, why don't you double the dosage? I don't play that with medications. I don't know what it's going to do to my body. So just be aware that the medicine here is decently weak. And if there's any kind of medication, over the counter medication that you prefer, I suggest you bring it with you. On to number 4, and this rises up to maybe a frustration level 5 or 6. Your name. I know that sounds weird, but when you fill out a bank form or life insurance, or you buy a car, or you fill out a loan or get a credit card, you have to put your name, of course, on the form. But how do you write it? After 18 years here, I finally learned to ask first, how do you want me to write my name? Now, let me explain. My name, of course, is an American name, first and middle name, but my last name is Japanese because I'm married to a Japanese man. I can write my name in two different ways. One in Japanese with the kanji and katakana. Katakana is the form of writing to write foreign, what they call foreign loan words. So, like writing McDonald's or a foreign name. So, I can write kanji and katakana, or I can write in what's called romaji, which is just the ABCs. I've gotten so frustrated with this. It's been a constant pain. I can guarantee you, like 100%, I am the only person in Japan with my name. American first name, middle name, and a Japanese last name. I guarantee it. I have got to be the only person with this name in Japan. But the Japanese are sticklers for the rules. Now, let me explain. During the pandemic, I had to renew my passport. I wasn't traveling, but I just like to have it current. So, just in case an emergency, I have to fly quickly back to America or what have you. And I had to mail it to the embassy. Luckily, as an adult, I can mail my application and everything. So, it makes it easier. My kids, I actually have to take them to the embassy. I had to send the embassy an international money order. In order to do that, I had to go to the post office. Now, the post office here, other than what happened to me last week, is a pretty interesting place. It does life insurance, it does banking, and it does the postal service. It has a lot of services in the post office. There's a lot you can get accomplished in there. The post office was the only place that provided international money orders. So I went there, I filled out the form, I gave it to the lady, and this happens every single time I fill anything out in this country. It's so frustrating. She goes behind the counter, and then it's like a huge circus. She calls a colleague over and she goes, "Is this correct?" The colleague's like, "I don't know. I have no ideas. Come here, come here, come here. Is this right? Is this name correct? Is this filled out correctly? I don't know. Let's get the manager. Manager over here. Manager, is this correct? Managers, I'm not sure. Let me call the district. Beep, 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 beep. Get on the phone. Hi. Seriously, I stood there and watched 7 or 8 employees in a little circle with one on the phone verifying if my name was correct. The young lady came back over and she goes, "I'm sorry, you need to write your name this way." I ripped up the form, filled out a new form, and gave it to the lady. And she took it back to the melee of employees, and they were all around it again. Is this right? This right? This right? I was just standing there going, okay, I've been here for like over 30 minutes now. Somebody please make a decision. She comes over a second time and she's like, "I'm so sorry. This is incorrect again." And I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So I ripped up the form again, filled out a new form, gave it to her, and she went back to the circus of employees. And I'm standing there looking at my watch. I'm like, okay, it's been now almost 45 minutes. If they come over here make me fill out a form a fourth time, I'm going to go insane. The young lady could tell I was getting frustrated, so she sent her male colleague over and he started to point at the form again. And I looked at him and I was like, "If you tell me I have to fill out this form one more time," and he's like, "No, no, 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 no. Here's your international form." I'm like, "Thank you." It took me 45 minutes because of my name. And it happens everywhere I go. So now, anytime I have to fill out anything official, I always ask the person, "Do you want it kanji, katakana? Do you want it in romaji?" And usually they have to ask me, "How is it written on your driver's license?" Or "How is it written on your gaigokujin card," which is my alien registration card. And I always tell them, "It's in romaji." They're like, "Okay, write it in romaji." And then they go back and they call the district manager and everything. And it's crazy. So every time I fill out any form now, I always ask them, "Kanji, romaji, first name, middle name, last name, or last name, first name, middle name. Do you want my middle name on there?" It's crazy. It really gets the frustration meter up there. when they're like so particular about how your name has to be written. So if you're aware of this before you come here, then ask the person, how do you want me to write my name? On to number 5, which jacks the frustration meter up to about 11. This, other than what happened to me at the post office last week, this was one of the lowest points in my life in Japan. It made me want to pack my bags and leave. Getting your driver's license. I am so glad I don't have to go through this again. I just have to go every 5 years and go through this relearner's course or what have you, and which is great, but that doesn't pertain to this story. Now, what I'm talking about is not getting a driver's license from scratch, which is on a whole nother level. You got to pay like $4,000. You got to take a 3-week drive. It's insane. What I'm talking about is you already have a driver's license from your country, and then you come here and you change it into a Japanese driver's license. That is the worst thing you're ever going to have to do here, in my opinion. Now, it doesn't pertain to all countries. Now, if your country has a national driver's license, which means wherever you live in your country, everybody has the same driver's license because the entire nation has the same driving rules, you're cool. You just have to change it over and you're done. You're great. This is for countries that have individual licenses for each area of your country. Like United States, we have 50 states with 50 different licenses with 50 different driving rules, saying because of that, I had to go through this whole process of getting my driver's license changed. Now, the first thing I need to warn you, if your driver's license is less than a year old, you're going to have trouble. I renewed mine before coming to Japan. Oh, I forgot something. When you first come here, if you have an international driver's license, you can drive on that for 1 year. After 1 year, you have to change to a Japanese driver's license and start early because it will take you months. It took me like 3 or 4 months. It took me 3 or 4 months to get it changed over. Because I renewed mine before moving to Japan, it looked like I just learned how to drive. So I had to get a letter from the DMV in America stating that I have been driving since I was 16, that my license was over 20 years old at that point. So the first thing you do is you locate your licensing center in your prefecture. Then you go there and you stand in line for a very long time, just like any other DMV. First things, you have to fill out a lot of paperwork. Make sure you ask how to write your name. You turn in any letters you have to prove that your license is more than a year old. After that, you make an appointment to take the written test. Now, the written test is a joke, basically. It's 10 questions. It's in English. I was done in 10 minutes. That was fine. I passed it 100%. After that, you have to make an appointment to take the driving test. Now, the driving test is insane. Insane. In our prefecture, which I very much can guarantee is pretty much the same in every prefecture. There are 3 courses: A course, B course, C course. A course is hard, B course is the most difficult one, C course is easy. I actually passed on the B course, which surprised me. What you're going to do now is you're going to go next door to the driving school. They always say that the driving school is not connected to the licensing center, but they're connected because the driving school will teach you how to pass the test for a big fee. Sorry, this is how Japanese gesture for money. Something's expensive. I don't know what it's like in every prefecture, but I bet there is a driving school next to your licensing center. You go to the driving school, you pay them. How much did I pay? I paid for 3 lessons and it was like $200 each lesson. So about $600 I paid. The way they teach you how to drive is just, let me give you an example. If you want to change lanes, you look rear view mirror, front, side mirror, what they call winker instead of blinker. Then you look in the rear view mirror, out the front, and side mirror again, and then move. And they teach you like ichi ni san. It's like 1, 2, 3. So this is how you have to drive if you want to change lanes during the driver's test. Ichi ni san winker. Ichi ni san. Ichi, ni, san, winker. It's just insane. And when you step on the brake, you had to look in the rearview mirror when you pressed on the brake. And if the instructor did not see your eyes go to the rearview mirror when you pressed on the brake, they would fail you. You have to inspect the car before you get in the car. And the car is not your car, it's this huge car that you're not used to. The first time I took the test, I was approaching. Now, you're not on the main street, you're actually in a driving course area. I'm approaching a light. I'm a quarter, about a quarter of the way underneath it, and it decides to turn yellow on me. So I continue. The instructor, you failed. Go back to the beginning. I'm like, what are you talking about? I failed. He goes, the light turned yellow. You're supposed to stop. And I'm like, I was a quarter of the way underneath it. No exceptions. You make one mistake, you fail, you're out. And the tests are expensive. Every time you take a test, it's like 4 or 5,000 yen, which is like $50. You have to pay for each test you take. You have to pay for it. Came out for my second test. I had A course this time, and I had to do this little zigzag thing with the car. And as I'm doing it, the rear tire slightly went off the pavement as I'm going through. The instructor, you failed. That's it. Out. I was so angry. So I made a third appointment, and it was B course. I went through the whole thing, and my heart's like pounding the entire time, and I'm counting and doing everything mechanical like a robot. I got to the end. I got out of the car. I felt like Rocky at the top of the stairs. I'm like, yeah. And I was like, I don't care if I get my license or not. I finally got through the test. I was the only person that day that got a driver's license. And they make it very difficult for foreigners to get a driver's license in Japan. If you're aware of this before you move to Japan, you can prepare for it and just take a breather and know that more than likely you're not going to pass it on the first time. It's going to take at least 3 to 5 times to pass it. On to number 6 and the last one. Now, I don't know how to say this, but the Japanese do treat you differently in certain respects, almost on the verge of, I hate this word, on the almost like, I guess the easiest way of saying it is it's it's basically racism. When it happens, it really makes you want to leave Japan. I've had racist things happen to me here in Japan, and it doesn't happen often with the general public. It's mostly with companies like banks or post office or life insurance companies. They're very, very, very against foreigners having an account with them. So let me explain. At the beginning of this video, I said something happened at the post office. Every time I go to the post office to mail anything, this always happens. It's to the point where I don't mail things anymore. Every time I mail something, they give you the third degree of what's in the box, where's it going. Usually for Christmas and birthdays and stuff, I'll order stuff online like Amazon or what have you, and have it mailed that way to my friends and family because it's just much easier. This year, I decided to mail a small gift. My youngest and I have gotten into making these little pens with beads on top of them. We thought it'd be fun to send a little pen to friends and family back home and say, hey, we're thinking of you. Here you are. So I got these little envelopes, padded envelopes, put the pens in them, and I put a little letter in there saying Merry Christmas, that sort of thing. And I go to the post office. And as soon as I laid it on the counter, the lady's like, what's in the package? I'm like, it's a pen. She's like, is there a letter in there with it? Apparently, you cannot mail letters with goods. I have no idea why. Of course, I lied and I said, no, there's no letter in there. It's just a pen. It is a Christmas gift for friends and family back home. It's just a pen. She started looking at charts on the wall, grabbed out a file, starts going through the file. Then she grabs this other stack of papers, going through the papers. And I'm like, what is going on? It's just a pen. And she's like, well, you have to print out the labels first. I'm like, I have to print out the labels? Great. So I gather everything up, take it home, get online, enter in all the information I'm supposed to, print off all the labels, slap them on there. And then the next day I go back to the post office. I put them on the counter. Same lady. What's in there? It's a pen. Again, starts looking at charts on the wall, starts going through this file, gets this other stack of paper, starts looking through it. Then she gets on the phone and starts talking to somebody. I looked at her and I was like, it's a pen. She's like, I have to make sure the ink is okay. Are you serious? It's a pen. I was there for over 30 minutes waiting for them to find the decision. She was on the phone, just like, it's a pen, it's going to America, blah, blah, blah. I finally lost it. And the lady that was working with me, she spoke a little bit of English, so I was able to express my frustration to her in English. I'm like, this happens every time I come to the post office. Every single time. It doesn't matter if I'm mailing it overseas or if I'm mailing it within the country. Every time I come in here to mail something, you have to look through books, you have to look through charts on the wall, you have to call somebody on the phone. You do this to me every time I come in here. And she's like, oh, it's not you. We have to do it to everybody. It is the rules. It is our procedures. I told her, I said, I'm not coming to this post office ever again. And I stormed out. And then I made that video to send to my husband, tell him how upset I am. Perhaps it is their procedures, but I think they could do it a little bit better without making me feel like I'm a terrorist. Because that's exactly what they always say. It's because of terrorism. Another thing that happened with a bank, I was trying to open an account with them. The guy did not want to help me. He got like a little interpreter on an iPad and he just handed me the iPad. And the lady on the iPad, she was very apologetic. She was so sweet. And she's like, I'm so sorry they're not going to let you open an account here because of the terrorist act of blah, blah, blah. And I looked at him and I was like, my husband has an account here. I have a credit card with this company. Can I not open up a bank account? And he's like, nope, nope, I'm not going to help you. Terrorist act, terrorist act, terrorist act. He refused to let me open an account because the terrorist act. Every time I'm refused any kind of service because of the terrorist act. And they always use that as a way of limiting what foreigners can do here, which really, I can understand where they're coming from, but at the same time, I don't like being treated as a terrorist. This also happened with my life insurance. Through the post office, you can get life insurance. When my husband and I first got married 16 years ago, we decided it would be a good idea if we both get life insurance. So we go in, we get life insurance, sign it, no problem. 10 years I paid into it. And then I get a notice, your life insurance is ending, going to have to get a new account. Life insurance expires after 10 years. That was news to me. So my husband and I, we went to the post office. We went through their spiel of what policies they have and everything. That was like a good 2-3 hours we were there. We both decided on what we wanted. We filled out a bunch of paperwork. Then we had to come back another time, fill out some more paperwork, sign this, sign that. Then I had to come back a third time with my father-in-law as an interpreter because they had to go step by step through every bit of the policy to make sure I understood it all. And that was another like 2 hours. I signed all that. All total, it took us over 2 weeks to get this done. And then my husband was accepted, but I was denied. And I'm like, what do you mean I was denied? I've had life insurance with the post office before, and I never missed a payment. I was always good with it. Why am I denied? My husband looked at me. He says, I think it's because you're a foreigner. And I was like, are you sure? He goes, yeah. When I called the post office about it, the guy on the phone did not want to directly say it. He goes, I could tell by the way the man was speaking that he was very embarrassed about it. My husband asked him directly, is it because my wife is a foreigner? And the guy would not directly answer him. I ended up having to go through a different life insurance company and pay a lot more money. And I had to get my husband to co-sign with me, co-sign for life insurance, because I'm a foreigner. This doesn't happen often, but when it does happen, it is devastating and it makes me sometimes question why I'm here. The next time somebody quotes the terrorist act to me again, I think, though, I might pack my bags and leave then. That takes us to the end of this video. I would say this is part 1 because there are some other frustrating things here, but at the moment, I think I'll just leave it at this. Let me know in the comments below, would any of these make you want to leave Japan or not come here at all? Let me know. And while you're down there, please subscribe. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.